my ex-husband, or as I sometimes like to think of him, my baby daddy, is the visionary Elon Musk of Tesla and SpaceX. I met him when I was 18, he was 19. We were at college. He would call me up. He always had classical music playing in the background. And he would ask me out, and I would say no. And he would call me up again, and he would ask me out, and I would say no. And it went on like this until we ended up living together in an apartment in the Bay Area, which we shared with 3 roommates and a miniature dachshund who was not house-trained. And by the time we divorced, we were living in a house in Bel Air with no roommates and a miniature dachshund who still was not house-trained. So it's a really funny Simpsons episode. Elon has this meeting, and as a dark fantasy writer who's had novels published by major publishers and stories and anthologies and has a blog, this line leaped out at me because I actually think a lot about creativity and darkness and the larger-than-life nature of these people that we call visionaries and geniuses, or as my son likes to say, genii. And darkness does not have to mean evil. You know, it can refer to anything that has not yet been brought out into the light, that lives in the space beyond boundaries, beyond our comfort zone, where a lot of us do not want to go. The writer Lucy H. Pierce has a quote that I like a lot. She says, "As creatives, our job is to uncover what lies in the darkness and give it new life, new identity." And I realize that artists and entrepreneurs are a lot alike, and that they are both obsessed with creating something out of nothing, with pulling value from the dark. So when I was preparing this talk, I said to Elon, so do you have any advice that I could maybe give to bright young things in the audience who might want to? And when Elon and I would travel, and we had to fill out those forms at customs that wanted to know your occupation, Elon never wrote down CEO or King of the World or Studley International Playboy. He wrote engineer. And he wore jeans and t-shirts to work. And whenever we went shopping for clothes, or later consulted with the stylist whose name was Martin, he would say, no, you don't understand. I can't look cool or hip because I have to look like an engineer. And one of the things that he told me, although I don't know if it's as true now as it was back then, was that engineers cannot quite figure out why it was that the suits made the big money when it was the engineers who actually built the stuff that they were selling. And meanwhile, the suits would listen to the engineers talk and they would have no idea what they were saying. And that's when I realized that Elon was somebody who had learned to speak both languages. And he could move between the tribes because he was an engineer in a suit. And he brought together worlds. And this is what an engineer does. This is what a visionary does. They not only create something new, but they become the living embodiment of it. They don't just tell us a new story. They are that story. And soon they don't even have to open up their mouths. They just walk into the room. I recently read a profile on Elon, and he's quoted as saying something to a friend, and this happened during the time we were still married together. And he said something to this friend that he never said to me. And he was saying that he was prepared to sacrifice everything, his entire fortune, to get a rocket into orbit. And he said, I don't care if Justine and the kids and I end up living in Justine's parents' basement. I'm going to make this happen. And so I read this, and I kind of wanted to go back in time and go up to him and take him by the shoulders and look him very seriously in the eyes and say, have you seen my parents' basement? So I'd like to wrap up by getting to Elon's advice, which is to always go beyond memorizing formulas, passing tests, to always go deep into the underlying principles of a subject, to track any problem down to the root cause buried in the dirt in the dark. And I would add to that and say, be brave enough, be bold enough, and be insane enough to see things more completely, more vividly, more fully than everybody else around you. and refuse to look away from what you see and what you know, even if people want to burn you at the stake. Because visionaries, they take all that passion and their badass personalities and their mad skills and the mastery of their chosen subject matter, and they use it to put themselves on the line, unlike anybody else you'll ever meet. And it's this that allows them to open up windows into another deeper reality in which transformation is possible and things of awe happen on a regular basis. Because in the beginning, we don't trust them because we think they're crazy, but by the end, we trust them because we know they're crazy. They're crazy enough to accomplish anything and risk it all in order to bring us something new to believe in. They might make lousy husbands and terrible wives. They might be the friend who never sends you a birthday present and forgets to show up for coffee. But they bring light to the dark, and they show us the universe. Keep the channel.
Boy, with Musk, you have a dark father who is still jangling in his head. But also how those demons are sometimes turned into drives that have allowed him to do things that others haven't been able to do.
Elon Musk, the enigmatic visionary, delves into uncharted realms, summoning the demon mode within, beckoning us to witness the duality that fuels.
But he amplifies them, he engages with them, and it's changed Twitter. I mean, you and I used to be on a lot with our friends who got our little anointed with blue checks, and it was a sweet conversations, and now it's a more pugnacious place, but it's also a place where more voices are being heard.
As the world listens, the echo of Musk's inner struggle resonates, underscoring the battle between ingenuity and the shadows that dance in the periphery of relentless determination.
Well, you're right. He jokes about, is open about having Asperger's. And as you know personally, and I know too, if you're on the autism spectrum, there's so many different variations of it. And he shows many of those variations. So it's not one thing. But in his particular case, having empathy and emotional relationships, that's not something that's encoded into him or that he does. He says he tried to learn it, just as you said, Joe, by reading books, but he's not good at that. And so it makes him a jerk. It makes him there's a technical term that begins with A that they use sometimes, but it is partly because he lacks that feel for empathy, which is a real downside, especially if you're going to buy a social network. He's driven by three things, and that's the first of them. And it sounds strange. He talks about human consciousness being so rare, and that if we don't become multiplanetary, human species may get wiped out someday. And I used to think the first 10 times I heard him say it, it was a type of pep talk you give at, team building meetings or on podcasts. But as a kid who had read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, to the Galaxy once too often, I actually think he truly believes that engaging in space travel is a mandatory, adventuresome thing that humans need to do.
Within this exploration of the human psyche, a tapestry of complexity unfurls, inviting everyone to navigate the maze of genius and its often tumultuous relationship with our own inner demons.
But that's not every possible outcome. So we need to minimize the probability that something will go wrong with digital superintelligence. Yes. So I'm in favor of AI regulation because I think advanced AI is a risk to the public, and anything that's a risk to the public, there needs to be some kind of referee. That referee is the regulator. And so I think that my strong recommendation is to have some regulation for AI. In terms of access to goods and services, I think AI will be ushering an age of abundance. Assuming that we're in a benign AI scenario, I think the AI will be able to make goods and services very inexpensively. And so in anything that is a product or a service where there's not artificial scarcity created, such as like, I want to live exactly in this, neighborhood of houses. It's like, okay, well, there's only 100 houses there. So, that would still have scarcity. Or a unique artwork would have scarcity. But anything that does not have scarcity that we deliberately design to be scarce will be plentiful for everyone in a benign scenario.
I think that actually the most likely outcome for artificial intelligence is that it is good, that it will improve our lives, most likely. But there's some chance that it will not, and I think we just need to be cognizant of that and understand that it's a powerful technology, it's a double-edged sword, and we need to put a lot of effort into ensuring that we have a good AI outcome and not a bad one.
What does a good one look like?
Well, I'd recommend people read the Ian Banks books,
okay.
The culture books. That's the best representation of a positive AI human future that I've seen.
Okay.
So that's my recommendation. I mean, effectively AI, I think it will massively enhance human ability. It's like just a massive amplifier of human ability, just like the computer was. So really, it's just a question of like, there's some risk that it doesn't merely amplify human activity, but it starts basically just being in charge.
The spotlight narrows on Elon Musk, a modern Prometheus, urging us all to grapple with the dichotomy of brilliance, a flame that can both illuminate and consume.
Well, I don't think the AI is going to try to destroy all humanity, but it might put us under strict controls. I mean, and there's no non-zero chance of it going Terminator. It's not 0%, but it's. I think it's a small likelihood of annihilating humanity, but it's not zero. We want that probability to be zero, as close to zero as possible. And then, like I said, the of AI assuming control for the safety of all the humans and taking over all the computing systems and weapon systems of Earth. I mean, AI is definitely going to be a massive disruptive force. I mean, AI is probably the most disruptive technology ever. I mean, the crazy thing is that, the advantage that humans have is that we're smarter than other creatures. Like if we got into a fight with the gorilla would definitely win. But we're smart. But now for the first time, there's going to be something that is smarter than the smartest human, like way smarter than the smartest human. And as you can see from Midjourney, the art that AI can create is incredible. It's so beautiful, and it does it, within seconds. So we're at. I mean, I think, there's that sort of saying, "May you live in interesting times," which I think is like not exactly a good thing sometimes. But we actually live. I think we live in the most interesting of times. The advent of AI, and I actually thought to myself at one point, like, would I really want to be alive at this point? Like, let's say that there is some AI Armageddon that happens, some sort of AI apocalypse. I think I would still want to be alive at this time to see it, and hopefully not cause it. But. It's just I think we live in an extremely interesting time, because the things that you see AI being able to do now, it's going to do much more with each passing year. Cars will absolutely drive themselves better than any person could drive.
In this age of technological marvels, Elon Musk's dance with the demon mode serves as a haunting reminder that within the realm of innovation, embracing our own shadows is a crucial step towards illuminating the path to the future.
Yes, that's what I mean by like AI uses as a weapon. Right. And the pen is mightier than the sword. So one of the first places we have to be careful of AI being used is in social media to manipulate public opinion. So the reason that Twitter is going to a primarily subscriber-based system is because it is dramatically harder to create. It's like, call it 10,000 times harder to create an account that has a verified phone number from a credible carrier, that has a credit card, and that pays a small amount of money per month, and have those credit cards and phone numbers be highly distributed, not clustered, is incredibly difficult. So whereas in the past, someone could create a million fake accounts for a penny apiece, and then manipulate, have something appear to be very, very much liked by the public when in fact it is not, or promoted and retweeted when in fact it is not. This popularity is not real, and essentially game the system. So the bias towards a subscription-based verification, I think, is very powerful, and that really you won't be able to trust any social media company that does not do this, because it will simply be overrun with bots to such an extreme degree.
AI will certainly be very disruptive because jobs will be different. So no, I think the rate of the change caused by AI is going to be pretty radical. So there will, a lot of jobs that currently exist won't exist in the future. But I think there will be new jobs, and I do think, like in a benign AI scenario, we will really have an age of abundance. I think really goods and services, unless they're artificially made scarce, like it's specialized artwork, or you want that particular house in that neighborhood, like it has to be an artificial scarcity. But anything that is not made artificially scarce will be plentiful as in a benign AI scenario. You'll be able to have any products and services you want.
I think that's something we need to be on the lookout for in a big way, is to make sure that we're minimizing the impact of AI manipulation. We're certainly very much taking that seriously at X Twitter, X/Twitter, and I think we're putting in place all of the protections to minimize and certainly detect when we see large-scale manipulation of the system.
When Elon Musk takes his own network, and he's got over 100 million followers, and says, I'm going to make it an issue, it becomes one. Very few people get to own their own unregulated network, which is what Twitter is.
Kevin O'Leary, the discerning voice of the financial world, peers into the abyss that Elon Musk's provocations have unveiled, beckoning us to grasp the gravity of this monumental issue.
So if you think about press cycles, and I look at it from a pragmatic point of view in a very partisan place that we are now, stories come and go every 48 hours. Not this one. This one is staying at the top quartile of all press every week now for 5 weeks. Because these images are really striking. I think what's lost in the narrative, particularly around detailing illegals, what's going to work, who's going to sue who, is why is he doing this in the first place? And I think there's a good reason. Tesla and SpaceX and all of his other initiatives pay $0 in advertising. Nothing. The only car company on earth that size that pays nothing in advertising. How did he do it? He did it on the back of Twitter and other social media platforms. The problem with the policies so far and the multiple bills, including the CHIPS Act and, of course, the Anti-Inflation Act, whatever you want to call it, is just massive spending, but it's the target of where that spending went. Here's the problem. Most of it's going to the S&P 500 companies. They're important. They're big employers in America. However, they only represent 40% of the economy. I want everybody to understand this bank deal left $20 billion in the hands of taxpayers. And FDIC insurance is actually paid by banks into a big fund, about $250 billion. This took $20 billion. It cost the fund $20 billion. Those are, let's call them worthless assets.
With uncompromising analysis, O'Leary unravels the layers of Musk's provocations, thrusting them into the glaring spotlight, imploring us to comprehend the seismic impact of Musk's actions.
what the shockwave went through that people haven't seen the end of is every bank now, the 4,600 that remain, where most small businesses bank and do payroll on Wednesday night, have been told, hold up on loans because we have to see the effects of real estate going through your portfolio.
Wow.
We've got a problem here, Houston. It's coming to a theater near you. And it's slowly becoming a bipartisan issue in debates, on news, and all news outlets, because when Elon Musk takes his own network, and he's got over 100 million followers, and says, I'm going to make it an issue, it becomes one. So if you look, I buy services, so many advertisers like me do the same thing. We look on social to see how many minutes each topic stays. And they come and go about every 48 hours. This thing is growing every day. And why you care is, these are where the eyeballs are going to watch the issue, and that's how advertising dollars get chased. I don't want to make this about money, but it's becoming a big deal. And if you're running for presidency on either side of the aisle, you're going to have to deal with this one. This one's not going away, and it will become a top 3 presidential debate. It's around security. It's about the human race. It's about children. It's big.
His words become an alarm bell ringing through the markets, resounding through boardrooms and trading floors, urging us to assess the ramifications that ripple through the economy.
Very few people get to own their own unregulated network, which is what Twitter is. So, barring the price, which obviously he's overpaying for, he has 100 million plus followers. Now,
but he had the 100 million plus followers, whether he owned the asset or not.
But he doesn't control the narrative there. He doesn't control the platform. And frankly, it is, Iger himself said, we didn't buy this at Disney because it's just loaded with bots. And it's the slowest growing platform. It's the worst managed. It's a terrible company. I'm sorry to say that, but I use the platform too. And I look at all the metrics versus all the other ones, including TikTok and LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. It's the worst in terms of getting your message out. Now, if he gets control of this thing at whatever price and fixes it and allows it to be a true narrative where every voice is heard, because I don't like this canceling this politician, canceling that politician, then it's a world platform. Then it's maybe worth it. But if he can't get the debt markets. So what he's hinting at there, and this is a really interesting debate that's just bubbling to the surface now. A lot of congressmen and women are exploring this idea of proxy services. There's only 2 large proxy service companies in America that's a duopoly that have about 90% share of the market. So they're completely opaque in trying to provide any information. They don't give you the reasons they vote for ESG mandates or not. So they provide the voting services, they make the recommendations, and they're very pro ESG without telling you what's in it they're pro about. You have no idea. So what Elon's really getting at is saying, wait a second, if you're a BlackRock or a Fidelity or somebody else and you're using one of these proxy services where 80 or 90% of your and my money in 401ks and savings accounts is harbored, I don't have a say in what ESG is. Tesla itself got delisted out of an index on the S&P as a non-ESG company, and my goodness, it's an EV company, and nobody can explain why that happened. So now we have a situation where we need to shine the light on ESG, and that's making a lot of these proxy companies, the 2 big ones, very uncomfortable because they make billions in fees. They're not accountable to anybody, and all of a sudden, you and I are talking about this issue, and the Congress is coming after them. I say, great, let's shine the light of transparency on these companies. There's no reason we shouldn't be doing that, and let's get some competition. Let's get a 3rd and 4th proxy company that provides transparency. But ESG is a big deal, and now it's bubbling up as an issue.
As the world listens, the echo of O'Leary's warning resonates, underscoring the interconnectedness of financial markets and the influence that a single provocateur can wield.
He can't raise any capital because the regional banks have stopped lending to him as they wait to see what the new liquidity rules are. This is why I was on the Hill yesterday. I was banging the drum up and down the hall saying, everybody, let's wake up to what's happening to my small companies. I got 34 plus companies. They can't raise a dime. There's no Bidenomics for them. They have no capital, and that's a big problem, and it's manifesting itself. Those are the people that are looking for cheaper toothpaste and all the issues that are going around inflation. Core inflation is not down. CPI, yes, but core inflation, the real inflation that hurts a small individual that's trying to live off $58,000, They're getting, and this will show up in the polls. This will become political, but we've got to save small business right now. We have to do everything in our power to make sure they get access to capital. This is a problem that's only 6 to 8 weeks old. You talk to anybody running a small business between 5 and 500 employees, they cannot raise any money. That's bad economic policy, and that's because Biden's focused only on the big guys. EVs get captured in that because obviously, in order to operate an EV successfully, you're going to do that in a metropolitan area because you don't have to drive past 200 miles a day, but it's not going to work in the rural economy where we still need gasoline because you're driving thousands of miles a month. And so I look at this saying, good, okay, let's have this conversation. Let's talk about all of these issues because we're going into an election cycle, and all of a sudden, at a time when no one thought this would be a big debate, we've watched what's happened in Europe, and we're talking about energy, independence, and security, and now it's one of the top 3 agenda items in the election, which is absolutely great, and it's being highlighted by this bill. A lot of people, regardless of what side of the aisle you were on, never thought this would adjust for inflation, never thought it would help. When you turn on the spigot of government spending on either side of the aisle, that is how you get inflation. At some point, you have to stop printing money. So the anti-inflation bill, or whatever you want to call it, is just printing money. Now, where that money goes is the narrative today. I love the fact it's being debated. I love it's being questioned. But above all, what I like about it is we're talking about energy and where it should come from, because you cannot have prosperity in America without energy and energy security. So now all of a sudden, people are saying, wait a second, all of these alternative ideas can't happen fast enough. We got to go back to what we know is working. So now we're re-examining oil, gas, and they should be part of the discussion. And frankly, I think it's a good thing because they are going to be looked at, and now we can make them and do them in a clean fashion. So I get the clean agenda. I get it. Everybody wants a better outcome in terms of how we transition. But I'm going to start funding refineries because we can build them clean now, and we can do it in a way that's never been done before. We haven't built one since 1977.
Within this exploration of economic turbulence, a tapestry of speculation unfurls, inviting everyone to grapple with the unpredictability that shadows innovation and the markets.
And then all of a sudden you overlay different policy, because I don't think you even have to talk about politics. When you talk about California, you talk about dysfunctional policy, making it very hard for businesses to actually operate there, including the banking sector. The Daily article was really hard to read and very damning on the San Francisco Fed because it basically said they got lost. Their policy had nothing to do with managing risk and duration anymore. They were off on some really crazy agenda items that have nothing to do with banking. And I think a hard hammer is going to fall down on that. But I'd argue this, Larry, that's a poorly managed state. And as a result, you have poorly managed banks. And at the end of the day, other people in other states don't want to pay for those mistakes. I think the policy in California is bad for business, bad for banking, bad for every sector. And it's not about politics. It's bad policy.
The spotlight narrows on Kevin O'Leary, the sage of the market, urging us all to listen and discern. For in the waves of change lie both peril and opportunity.
Yes, I've advanced in North Dakota. That's the closest opportunity. They're the most progressive because they've solved the solution of taking the flare and putting it underground. So we're able to do that in their unique geology. It's farther along than it was 90 days ago, and I realize all of these things move slowly, but I'm not stopping. And I'm happy to put a wind farm right beside it, but it doesn't solve the problem of energy independence. I'm happy with wind, I'm happy with solar, I'm happy with everything. But right now, I'm a realist, and I'm concerned about how we provide energy for prosperity for every single bipartisan taxpayer in the country. And finally, I'm getting the ear of everybody saying, you know, he's not crazy. You can't solve the problem with wind. You can't solve it with solar. You can't solve it with any one of these new ideas. We have to work with what we know works, and that's hydrocarbons. So bring that back into the discussion. And yes, I'm advancing, and it's not the only state. Also talking with Oklahoma and Texas. I will not stop until I've built some refineries, because it's the right thing to do for America. No, this is a classic rats running off the ship. There's nothing else, no other way to describe it. Remember, what you're seeing play out here, and you just don't know the timing of it, this is FTX Part 2, because what took FTX down was this CZ himself. He was able to manipulate the token of the exchange, the FTT token, jam $520 million on the week of November 6th last year onto the exchange when it didn't have enough cash, and bankrupted it and took out his largest competitor, leaving Binance the largest unregulated exchange in the world. Now, that victory was short-lived because the regulators are going after him all around the world. But here's his problem. He's got $60 billion of a token called BNB. Now, I consider that worthless. It has no value. But if you want to turn it into $60 billion of fiat currency, let's say the US dollar, you're going to watch the whole thing unravel the same way FTX bankruptcy. Now, is someone else backing him? Does he have 60 billion? Who knows? The whole thing's totally transparent. But what I like about what's happening here, and the regulators are squeezing his head like a teenage pimple, and that's good, because we've got to get rid of all these cowboys. If we want to see crypto take its rightful place in financial services, you got to get rid of these guys, and he's one of them.
In this age of financial dynamics, Kevin O'Leary's focus on Musk's provocations serves as a stark reminder that the consequences of innovation often extend far beyond the realms of technology, reaching into the very heart of global economies.
You've got to think of Quebec as the Florida of Canada. It determines the CEO in the Canadian parliamentary system is the Prime Minister. And so depending on the ebb and flow of the other provinces, you really need to win at least 23 seats in Quebec if you're going to run a majority mandate. And my whole premise in that race in 2016 was, look, give me this job for 4 years. Let me apply what I believe are good executional skills, and I'll turn this country around. The same kind of message that was occurring with Trump at the time. And it was a populist message because Canada is the richest country on earth run by, and I hate to say that as a Canadian because I have a passport, but I'm also Irish and I'm also Emirati. But I'm really unhappy about the way Canada's run, and I'm not picking at any one politician's. Very weak skill sets in management there, and that's the premise by which you want someone from business to run a country. No, that's not what I hear, and I live in the real world. I'm here on the Hill today in Washington talking to everybody I can about the problems I've got in just getting working capital for small businesses. We have a crisis emerging. These rapid rate hikes that have occurred, unprecedented speed of these hikes, have put my small businesses, and I'm talking about companies with 5 to 500 employees, which represent over 60% of our economy. You know, if you're in the S&P 500, you have no trouble financing your business. You can't say that about small business anymore. The cost of capital has gone through the roof. And so I'm urging everybody to listen to me on the Hill today. I'm walking up and down the hall saying, let's tell small business how to survive this pending crisis. And the program that I'm really talking up is the Employee Retention Credit, which none of these small businesses have applied for yet. And I want everybody on the Hill to let their constituents know they should apply for it, because we've got a real crisis coming here. There's no cash for small businesses. And when the Fed raises rates another 50 basis points, that's going to make it worse. So no, I'm not happy. And I'm in the real world talking to CEOs of small companies that are family owned in America in almost every state every day. They're not happy either. So I'm not listening to that data. I'm dealing with reality.